good. I'm Laurie Actman with the Penn Center for Innovation, and today I have the pleasure of moderating a panel focused on research and development on the Pennovation Works campus and some of the amazing start and now current activity, both research and programmatically occurring on the campus in celebration of the 5-year anniversary since the Pennivation Center and the entire site was launched. So a lot has happened. We remember initially when the center opened, there wasn't a lot of activity there, and that quickly changed. And now it's a very dynamic entrepreneurial environment throughout the whole site and growing. So it's been very exciting to see. And the panel here today has really been part of it from almost the beginning or near the beginning, which is also very exciting. So today we have Cynthia Otto, who's the leader of the Working Dog Center, Mark Yim, who among other roles is the head of the GRASP Lab in the Pennovation Center, Phil Johnson, who's the CEO of Interius Therapeutics, which is based down at the center, and Mike Dishowitz, who's the executive director of Pci Ventures. So I'm very glad to be hosting you all. And I wanted to give you a few minutes each to introduce yourselves and what you do down on the campus site. So Cindy, why don't we start with you?
Sure, yeah, since I am sort of the original occupant of this, we actually were here before it was Pennovation. We were here when it was just a sort of an abandoned abandoned space with lots of great warehouses. And so I am a professor of working dog sciences and sports medicine at the veterinary school here at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also the founder and director of the Penn Working Dog Center. And we moved in, we opened on September 11th of 2012. So we are actually coming up on our 10-year anniversary of being on this space, which is just pretty exciting. And we really fell in love with the space before it became developed and have really gained some of the benefits as more people have become part of the space and been adding to the community that we have here on Pennovation Works. But we raise and train detection dogs. We are a research, education, and training center that has really gained worldwide renown in the 9.5 years that we've been on this space, and we couldn't have done it without this perfect location.
Great, thank you. And that's true. You really predated the development of everything, but have grown along with it and are an amazing member of the community now. So that's been great to see. Mark, why don't we go to you next, since I think your team really helped plan the center, since you were, I think, one of the first occupants, and the vision of VJ in terms of robotics on the site is also kind of inherent in the GRASP Lab.
Right, so I think the GRASP Lab was one of the first tenants, so we occupied the 3rd floor of the Pennovation building. I remember, so I wasn't head of the GRASP Lab at the time. VJ is pretty much the one who kind of arranged all of that to happen. I remember visiting the site when it was just this empty concrete floor, and it was a little bit scary to be moving in there. So I am a professor in mechanical engineering. I'm head of the GRASP Lab. The GRASP Lab is about 20 professors in mechanical, electrical, and computer science. And then we've got another maybe dozen what we call GRASP affiliates who are in nursing and in architecture and material science and philosophy. We have a whole range of professors that are involved in different aspects of robotics. So we are also, the GRASP Lab is the oldest robotics research lab, I think, in the world, it's in the country. It was started by Regina Baishi, who came back to Penn just last year, 42 years ago, I think it was. So I've only just I've been the head for a couple years. So my lab and so half of the GRASP lab is basically in the Perch, what we call Perch, which is the third floor, where we do a lot of experiments. We also have the big netted area that's just next to the parking lot, where we also do experiments.
Great, thank you. I didn't know that about the GRASP lab, so that's an amazing fact. Mike Dishowitz, why don't we go to you next, since you're also part of the kind of Penn delegation, to talk about Pci Ventures.
All right, thanks, Laurie. So I love that all of us have our Pennovation origin story. Mine is I was hired to be a part of the ventures group at PCI 7 years ago. So it was actually August of 2014. And 1 month after that, we started every Friday coming down to the Pennivation campus, and we would set up shop in building 212, which is the 1 floor story building right next to the Pennovation Center. And we were there every Friday, and then a couple months into it, we then moved down there permanently. And at that time, it was Cindy's group with the Working Dog Center. KML Robotics was one of the first startup companies that was there, and they were acquired by Qualcomm, and we actually shared our building with Netronics, who's still, I think they have the entire building now. So it's just been amazing seeing the growth of the campus from what was just just a bunch of buildings and a lot of buses to this huge sprawling commercialization campus where you have small startups, medium-sized companies, big companies, and all different types of stuff there. So it's been great to experience that over my 7 years. So what I do at PCI on the ventures team is I work with faculty at Penn to commercialize their technologies by building startup companies with them. So we create the company, we help recruit management, we help with developing the initial strategy, we'll sit on the board, we'll help with operations, kind of, we serve as de facto co-founders of these companies, doing whatever is needed to spin them out of the university and get them off and running. And then, I'd say for the first several years that I was here, it was mostly faculty focused. But once the Pennovation Center launched, the university asked us to take space there permanently and to also provide similar services to all of the occupants in that building as well, helping them, making connections, fundraising, doing kind of whatever is needed. And so it's been really exciting getting to work with both internal Penn technologies and companies as well as external Philadelphia area companies and technologies and people.
Great, thank you. And also amazing to see the growth of the PCI Ventures portfolio out of the Pennovation Center. Phil, now I'd like to go to you. You bring a unique perspective via your partnership with the Penn research portfolio as part of your startups. So anyway, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Laurie. So I have only been here 5 years. The first company that I was affiliated with moved in I think it was September of 2016, just as the building was sort of able to support life sciences companies with, biosafety hoods and all of the things that you really need to have to support that type of biotech company. So that was a venture-backed company out of Penn. Gene Bennett had started the company, and then I became employee one sometime in that fall. And that company matured into a point where, just as the pandemic was hitting, was moved to Boston and split into 2 new companies that are actively ongoing now and continuing to raise money. So that one spawned 2 new companies, and then as the pandemic hit, we moved out, shipped everything to Boston. And then as the pandemic progressed, I became involved with another Penn company started by one of the faculty there who's obviously well known, Sar Gill. Sar had started another company a few years back called Charisma, which is based over on Market Street. But we decided to locate Interius at Pennovation Center because of all the advantages of being here, quite frankly. I mean, we're 8 minutes away from SAR's lab. We can walk over there. We have Mike and his team, PCI, based there, as well as the opportunity to expand, which I think we'll probably talk about in a little bit. So we have moved out of the Pennovation Works building, and we're now occupying a floor and soon to be 2 floors of the lab building. So I'm a veteran, 5 years, 2 companies here, and hopefully it's my last company. I don't think I can do a third one.
Well, we're glad to have you leading another amazing, innovative startup based on Penn faculty discovery. And it is amazing to reflect back on so much has happened since the building opened that you all have been involved with. Some highlights that I can just remember when we had the governor visit. There's been so many delegations that have come just to kind of understand what we've done and see how we do it, and meet the tenants that make the kind of the ecosystem so impressive, I would say. So there's a lot one could highlight related to my next question, but I would love to hear from you. Is there some success story based on kind of what you're doing that stands out in terms of what's happened, and maybe how just being at the Pennovation Works site has made that possible? Oh, and Cindy, I'm going to start with you again. Sorry.
Okay, I was waiting to see if that was going to be a jump in, or there's so many things that have made our success and our growth. I mean, we started with 7 puppies. We have now had over 130 in our program. But a couple of things that really have allowed us to thrive. One is the flexibility and the creativity. The fact that we're allowed to have a rubble pile on the Pennovation site is quite remarkable. So that's been great for our training. But just the community and our ability to participate in events. We hosted our conference here, and we'll be hosting our next, someday when we have another in-person conference, we'll be hosting it here. And that's been huge. We were able to participate in one of the TEDx events that kind of worked through here, and we get to be part of a lot of the visits from various people that come, and that's been great for our visibility, and also just being part of the team here. I think common highlights are the Halloween parade with our dogs all in costume, ridiculous and silly, but really fun, and being part of the community.
That's great. That's wonderful to hear. And yes, I would agree that everyone would agree that the costume parade is definitely a highlight of the culture of the center. Mark, why don't we go to you next?
So yeah, Pennivation has been really great, and for robotics, at least a lot of the robotics that half the professors do. In a variety of ways. One is having the space to do large experiments has been able to us to do things that we could not possibly do or even think about. Like outdoor flying robots, you need to have this net, at least according to the old FAA rules, you need to have a netted space to do that. You just weren't allowed to do outdoor flying robot tests. So that wasn't a huge enabler. Having a large motion capture space on the 3rd floor has been able to let us do a lot of coordinated flying swarm robots, or I have this reconfigurable robots that do different things on the floor, or mobile robots, all that kind of stuff, which we wouldn't be able to do without the space. So that's half of it. The other half of the story is the fabrication. We have on the 1st floor some and in the basement some fabrication space to make stuff. And what's been really great for us is we've gotten to the point where we don't need to think about how am I going to make this, or am I going to be able to have this space, or whatever. Just being able to change the way you think. So, okay, this is what we need to do. It can happen. We know it can happen because we now have the space to do it. That has been a really huge different way for all the students to be able to think. And of course, there's just the volume of production of papers and PhD students and all that kind of stuff that have come out because we've had this extra space, which is fantastic.
That's great. And I agree. The robotics program and the growth has been a huge part of defining what the Works in the Center is all about. So it's been really fun, I think, for everyone to have more opportunities to see it in action, which probably is harder to do on campus when it's a bunch of little labs. So that's just been really exciting. I'll go to you next, Mike, to talk about, there's a lot of highlights, I'm sure, from PCI Ventures. I've really enjoyed all your showcases, but I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Laurie. Yeah, so I mean, there could be a ton of companies that I got to highlight, but there's two in particular that I want to talk about, which I think are great success stories. And then the first one is actually a collaboration with Mark. I started working with Mark several years ago on his second startup company with our group, Grepo Technologies, a steerable needle technology that'd be able to deliver therapeutic payloads to very difficult to reach areas, tumors in the body. We worked hard trying to figure out the killer application for the steerable technology, wrote some SBIRs, got funding, hired our first employee, which was a master's student out of the University of Pennsylvania. They took space in the Pennovation Center. I was able to collaborate both on the second floor where they had space and go up to the third floor where Mark Yim's lab was to do some collaborations there via sponsored research agreements to his lab. And then, ultimately the company was able to raise a couple $1 million. It led to 2 spin-outs from the company, Verix Health and Serpix Medical. And while the CTO of those companies is out in the Bay Area, the management team still resides here in Philadelphia. It's just kind of an example of how, faculty ideas to technology, to fundraising, to personnel, to people, to space is really the foundation for all these innovations actually getting closer and closer to helping people out. Another company that I think is a huge success here is Flo Bio. So this one was founded out of Scott Diamond's lab in the engineering school. Again, similarly, wrote some SBIR grants, got funded. Our first employee was a PhD out of Penn. Our second employee was another PhD out of Penn. They started off with one shared desk at Pennivation and a shared lab, and over time, they raised some additional seed funding from an alumni from Penn who's made a couple different investments into our portfolio. And now they have a couple employees. They have more space at Pennivation, and they continue to grow. And at some point, we expect them to graduate from the Pennovation Center and move into the main labs at some point. So it's really exciting getting to, and this doesn't happen overnight. This is over several years of hard work from the team and the support that Pennovation has provided.
Great. Those were great highlights to focus on. Thank you. Phil, over to you.
So I would say 2 things, and they're both very important. First of all is proximity. So, we have profited over the 5 years from being able to access Penn very easily. It's literally walk across the bridge and you're on campus. And so that has been, an enormous plus for us, because we continue to have relationships with not only the founders of the companies, but also other faculty at Penn that we sign up as consultants or provide SRAs to. So, that proximity cannot be overstated, because it's really important. But the other piece that's important is the value proposition. So if you look at Market Street and all of the lab buildings over there, they're basically full and hard to get space. Here we've been able to not only get space, build out space, but at a reasonable price. We have traveled around over the past few years and looked at spaces in Boston and the Bay Area, and the prices there are simply outrageous. So I know of one company that was paying $150 a square foot for lab space, and that's triple what we're generally paying in this area. So it's the proximity and the value that really has driven our decision to build out here on this campus, and not a single regret.
Great, and that's wonderful to hear. Next, I wanted to hear from you all kind of where you see your programs or your startups growing or evolving over the next few years, and or even kind of what's next for you in terms of your activities down at Pennovation Works. If there's something new or notable, we'd love to hear about it. So Cindy, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, I always threaten Frez and the real estate group that we're, our plan is to take over the world. And so, we do want to continue to expand and grow, and we're actually hoping to move into a little bit of the empty space that's attached to our building, because our program is just continuing to sort of build new frontiers. When we first came here, we did not even have a law enforcement program, and now it's, there's not a day when there aren't, police cars and canines on campus here, which, increases the safety for everybody, hopefully. But that's, one piece. The research component, the studies that we're doing, whether it's been the medical detection for ovarian cancer or COVID, or some of our work that we're now moving into conservation and agriculture, looking at diseases of wildlife. There's so many opportunities that we have to grow there. Plus, we have a medical component that we're continuing to expand, and that's our canine sports medicine for the treatment of dogs that have been injured, and also just developing fitness plans for dogs. So we have, many areas that have growth potential, and we're excited to be, looking to how that is going to, allow our program to expand and really, reach even further than what we've done so far.
Great. I love that ambition. So that's wonderful to hear. Mark, to you next.
Yeah, so that was interesting to hear from Cindy, because it's our same ambition. And so I think we're going to be butting up against each other at some point. We are growing. I forgot to mention that we do have, we have in the new building, across from the parking lot from the new building, we have actually a water basin where we can do robot boats and tests in that, which is fantastic. So in that space, we are also planning to grow out. We're also talking with Frez, potentially our robotics master's program is planning to double in size. We've already started the process of doubling, and part of that was, to get some project space in some of the new buildings. So we're kind of excited about growing out, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. And this actually,
before you go on, Mark, if you want to do that as a pool space, we'll swim our dogs. You do your rowboats, and then we can do it in collaboration.
And actually, from the stuff you're talking about, I didn't know you guys had a rubble pile, and it used to be that we were looking at search and rescue, robots in search and rescue, and getting access to a rubble pile is actually very valuable. So I don't know, we may be reaching out to you about that. And also, we had one professor's been doing these robot dogs, and I don't know if you've seen the robot dogs walking out in the parking lot. The spin out is there, and I was thinking, oh, maybe we should do something with robot and real dogs, and that could be fun. Or have at least the parade with robot dog, the Halloween parade with robot dogs too.
Also sounds very exciting. Mike Dishowitz.
So although I'm not a member of Frez at Penn, I think that they have and they will continue to take a page out of one of my favorite movies growing up, Field of Dreams, the If You Build It, They Will Come. Built Pennovation Center, full. Started renovating the offices right across the parking lot. That's full. Main labs, that's full. And everybody still needs more space. And so, I can't imagine what the campus is going to look like 5 years from now, when more buildings are renovated and new buildings are built. It is exciting to be a part of. With respect to our programs, we're always looking at figuring out how to work with faculty better based on what their needs are and what the entrepreneur ecosystem is like. And what we've found, and my because my background, got a PhD in bioengineering, I work primarily with the life science companies, is that investments are happening earlier and earlier, just given the amount of venture capital funding that's out there. And so we're starting to work with faculty earlier and earlier, getting involved and helping them prior to company formation, advising them on how to interact with investors and position yourself, you know, even if it's something that's going to be 1 or 2 years down the road, just so that they're not, you know, behind the game when the technology is at a point where it's prime time. So we're focusing in and figuring out how to just help more faculty out without growing. I think we grew from 1 person 12 years ago, Michael Poisel, and now we're at 6. And I think that's the max. Maybe we can continue to grow a little bit, but we have to find a way to you know, work with more and more faculty with, you know, and expand. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And finally, Phil, would love to hear your plans for Interius and otherwise.
Yeah, so we have rapid growth plans that are currently being executed on. We started 1st of June, we had 5 FTEs. Now we're up to almost 30. And by the end of 22, we'll be well over 50 employees with a plan the following year to be close to 100. So what we're doing is going across the parking lot over there, that green space, and putting a flag down for Mike and the real estate guys to build another building on this campus, because I think it's really an enormous opportunity if we can shake loose the money from Penn to, you know, to do that development. Obviously with a developer, maybe not, but I think that's going to be the next thing that's going to happen on this campus. That's going to really transform this whole Grays Ferry corner of the world, which I just think has tremendous potential. I've spoken, the late Paul Seenert and I had many conversations about that when he was here. I've also had the opportunity to poke Craig Carnaroli about this. I think it's a real opportunity for Penn to put a stake in the ground in this emerging area. I mean, the robotics here is just fantastic. Mark just mentioned those dogs. I mean, those are just really cool. And I mean, if you've ever been around and seen those things, I mean, it's fantastic. I would ask Cindy, how did the real dogs react to the robotic dogs when they see them? I know my dog would run and go the other way, but perhaps those well-trained canines would not. But this is just a real opportunity, and you know, we plan to be here for the long term. And so part of our goal is to get that next building built so that we can expand inside too.
That's amazing to hear, and it sounds like you're poking the right people to kind of get Penn interested.
Craig and I were on this University City Science Center board for a number of years together, and so I have his permission to poke him anytime.
That's great. So one last question before perhaps we open it up to questions from anyone here, or we continue to enjoy the beautiful weather, but would love to hear, is there something that pleasantly surprised you about the culture of being down at the Pennovation Works campus, or something you particularly enjoy in terms of the environment or your day-to-day that you didn't expect, or you just wanted to highlight for the audience? And Cindy, I'll start with you again.
I think it's been brought up already several times as proximity, but I think that for us, it's the proximity to the students, because it really does allow us to have a number of students come and interact and participate in the program. And that's been just a huge bonus. And when we talk about where else could we possibly do this, there really isn't a place that gives us the proximity to the students, but also the proximity to the vitality of a urban city with all of its noises, which is great for the dogs. I mean, most people raise dogs like out on farms, and here we are in the middle of the city, but this is exactly the type of environment that the dogs are going to work in. So that has really turned into a great bonus for us.
Oh, but who would have known? So that's great to hear. Mark, to you next.
Oh, one of the things that was kind of a surprise, we were really, so kind of related to also what Cindy said about the proximity to students. We were a little bit worried about the students because the proximity is close, but not, it's actually further than what they're used to. Usually the lab is on campus and they go to class and then they just walk over to another room. We were worried that having this, half-hour walk or 10-minute shuttle ride would be a problem, especially if students going between classes and stuff. But it hasn't been. It has been a little bit of a problem, but it's not been as bad as we had expected, which is good. So the students have adapted. We have lots of students that are coming back and forth, and it hasn't been much of a problem as we expected, which is good. But when I asked them, like, what do you really like about, besides the obvious thing about space, parking is really valuable, being able to park there, and there's plenty of it, and we haven't run into the problem where we're running out of space. So that's a surprising thing to me, was that.
Well, it's a convenience that's hard to find anywhere in West Philadelphia near Penn. So anyway, that it's definitely notable. Mike?
Yeah, so I think it's the Pennivation campus is a great place to work. I live in the suburbs, but it's very convenient to get to. Mark already touched on parking. Very, it's, for me, 40-minute drive, get to park there, there's no walk. After lunch, if I want to go for a walk, the Schuylkill River Trail is right outside of the Pennovation Works campus. It's the Crescent Trail. It's about, I don't know, maybe a little bit less than a mile around. And right now it's not connected to the Schuylkill River Trail on the other side, but there are plans, I think, in the next couple of years, maybe even sooner than that, for it to be connected. And that'll, further connect the Pennovation campus to the rest of the city. So it is pretty exciting. I think what, has been lacking is the, close food sources for lunch. But there are different programs that Pennovation's put together that allow for free delivery from Franklin's Table, which is, has a lot of good restaurants. And so they're very adaptable environment that we've created here. And so it's very enjoyable to work at.
Those are great points. And Phil, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I think what Mike just said is important. I think as the site matures and grows, you're going to have more amenities come into the site, either incentivized or people looking for entrepreneurial opportunities for food service and other things. I mean, you could envision fitness centers and all sorts of things coming to this site to make it a complete community, some of which you have down on Market Street. But I think the conveniences that Cindy and Mark pointed out are huge. The one that I think is sometimes perhaps overlooked is the access to the airport. I mean, we are literally 10 or 15 minutes from the airport here, and it's just simple to jump out on 76 and run right to the airport. We just had some visitors in from London, and it was just extremely simple to get them back and forth from the center. So that can't be underestimated, because as hopefully the pandemic subsides and we get more travel back, we'll be seeing many more visitors coming in via the airport.
Those are all really great points. I don't see any questions in the chat. And before we, I guess, sign off, I just wanted, do you all have anything else you just want to highlight or say about your time and at the Pennovation Center? No obligation, but I can say on behalf of, the broader Penn innovation community, it's been amazing to have all you part of the campus and seeing how it's grown, and also kind of the mix of people and resources that have evolved down there, which I do think is truly unique, along with the proximity and partnerships with Penn. But if there's anything you'd like to add that I haven't kind of asked you to say, now's your chance.
I just think this is a great opportunity, again, to sort of cross-pollinate and connect and, find out opportunities of who else is here and how we can do things together. So Mark, yeah, let me know when you want to see our rubble pile. It's available.
Great, I love it. Phil, anything from you, maybe a message to other startups in terms of, you know, what's possible?
Yeah, the thing I would offer is, you know, there are a number of us here who have done a lot of this over the past years, and we'd be happy to provide advice and counsel to anybody who wants to talk about. I mean, I can particularly talk about venture capitalists and their ins and outs with that. I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody about, you know, how much should they accept, and you know, what are the downsides and upsides of VC. So we certainly have a number of people in our company who have done this before and would be delighted to help others in the center.
That's an amazing offer. Experienced startup CEO with Philip Johnson, working with some amazing technologies. So, well, before we conclude, I also just wanted to note that there's a huge team, an amazing team at Penn that works in and around the Pennivation Center collaboratively, some of whom are here today. And I just want to say thanks to all of them. It is truly a team effort that's led to where we are now and where we're going. So I'm grateful to be part of it. And I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to have this really engaging discussion and a great reminder of what we build and how positive it's been for all of us. So thank you again, and I'll look forward to seeing you down at Pennovation Works soon.
Thanks, Laurie.
Thank you.